Before we begin, I'd like to extend a tremendous mazel tov to Rabbi Shlita and to Rabbi Aaron Poston Shlita, who are kind enough to host our Shiurim on YIBONEH YouTube on the opening of their new center tonight. This is Tuesday evening, the grand opening of the YIBONEH Community Center in Yerushalayim. That's 52 Emek Refaim. There'll be festive food, and there'll be a shir from Rabbi Breitowitz at 8:30, and menorah lighting starts at 7 o'clock, the dedication of the mezuzah. This is a great achievement, first for Rabbi Breitowitz and Rabbi Poston, and for all of us who benefit from the work of YIBONEH. And we here at Campus Shemesh are very, very honored and glad to be a contributor to their Hasmonean Torah and all their efforts. Thank you. Happy Hanukkah to all. Welcome to a special shir in honor of the last days of Hanukkah. We're going to speak about the importance of the fifth day, which has passed, and the eighth day, which is coming. And I'd like to dedicate today's very special Hanukkah shir in memory of Solomon and Ruth Glazer. We have received the Sefer Torah from them, and we've had it. This is now the 20th anniversary of the writing of the Sefer Torah, its completion, and we've had it here in Israel the past 12 years. Here is their son, Yochanan, Glazer, who helped me bring the Sefer Torah to our Nefesh B'Nefesh flight, and we danced with it down as Nefesh B'Nefesh had online, at least at the time in 2012. Dancing, and we made hakafos right at the foot of the plane with soldiers, with people who were Ola. There were many, many lone soldiers who met that flight, and therefore we were graced and honored with Bibi Netanyahu speaking to our group, and Nathan Sharansky speaking to our group, Ministry Absorption, and it was at that time my about 6-year-old son Eli Melech, in the middle of Bibi's speech, got up and said on top of his lungs, "I hate speeches." So that was our original welcome to Eretz Yisrael. We fondly remember the Glazer family at this time. We daven for their health, their wealth, and their well-being. Beruchnius ubegashmius. Okay, so I want to speak about the two aspects. First of all, regarding the fifth day of Hanukkah. Fifth day of Hanukkah is a day in which we are, the minhag hachasidi is to give out Hanukkah gelt. The reason for that is if all of the days considered, the fifth day of Hanukkah is the most appropriate day because it is the one day of Hanukkah that cannot ever fall on Shabbos. And since that's the case, it was designated as the day to distribute monies because it will never interfere. But there may be a deeper reason as well, and we hope to explain that. Secondarily, we're going to speak about the significance of the final day of Hanukkah, known as Zos Hanukkah, and try to get a deeper understanding of its significance, which is referenced in the Sfarim HaKadoshim as the final day of judgment that began on Rosh Hashanah, continued through Hoshana Rabbah, when the judgments were distributed, and but Hanukkah is, so to speak, the final appeal. We have to understand why that is, where that's coming from. And there is no appeal that's ultimately final in the eyes of Hashem. So what does it mean? It says Zos Hanukkah is Sof Hadin, as the Bnei Yissaschar described it. So first, there was a Hanukkah miracle that happened just several days ago. Erev Shabbos Hanukkah, this year, the research team from University of Haifa located a treasure trove of Hasmonean coins from the Hasmonean king, Alexander Yanai, who was the successor, he was the grandson of Simon, of Shimon, the last of the Maccabeans to rule. The first, and of course, he was the great nephew of Yehuda HaMaccabee. And they said it was an archaeological Hanukkah miracle. So this University of Haifa team discovered 160 coins, all dug in the Jordan Valley, north of Yericho. Notice the location, Yericho, the entry point of Eretz Yisrael, a point which has been, unfortunately, no longer under the jurisdiction of the state of Israel, but hopefully will return soon, or at least close to the borderline, which is Jericho. The coins were dated from the King Alexander Yanai, whose Hebrew name was Yonasan. He was a very successful king. He was the king that really took over a solidified Jewish state of Judea. And on the 25th anniversary of his reign, which is a long time, if you think about it, like the 25th anniversary from the founding of the State of Israel, a lot happened in those first 25 years. And he found what we will call, Dr. Yoav Farhi called it Kaneka Geld. Okay, he actually had delivered a pack of chocolate coins and gold in gold foil and distributed it to his archaeological digging team in the hope that they would somehow find coins that would be of significance to whatever era. Dr. Shai Bar of University of Haifa said, we'll do this so that we will find some coins today. And they ate those Kaneka Geld, and sure enough, 4 or 5 hours later, on Erev Shabbos Chanukah, they found this stash of 160 Hasmonean coins from Alexander Yanai, which all had an 8-pointed star, which is interesting. We don't have usually an 8-pointed star. And it says King Alexander, year 25, in Aramaic, which was the spoken language of the Jewish people at that time, at least the Jewish language, so to speak. You could call it the Yiddish of the day or the Hebrew of the day. And on the other side, it said in Greek, coin of King Alexander. And this dates to 80 before the Common Era. What is the significance of this incredibly miraculous find? The researchers are stunned. So it's something we need to take note of, and it's something that we need to interpret in the context of these last days of Hanukkah, and what its meaning for us specifically is on this Hanukkah. Okay, so let's begin. The idea of Zos Hanukkah being the end of judgment is raised by Bnei Yissaschar in his teachings, but is particularly highlighted in a shiur, a sicha of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that was given it was recorded in volume 25 of his Likutei Sichos, and page 243 to 250. Only thing is, it's in Yiddish. I'm actually going to read you 2 Yiddish paragraphs, hopefully without butchering it too badly. So the Lubavitcher wanted to know why the 8th day is so significant, and we know that there is a machlokas between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai whether the 8th day is the largest amount of candles, which is Beit Hillel's psak, or 8th day, 8 candles on the first day, which is Beit Shammai's psak. And what is the machlokas between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, and why would they have these opposing views? So in order to understand this, the Lubavitcher Rebbe taught as follows. Nikudat habiur bazeh, that's not Yiddish yet. Sizfaran achiluk zwischen wie der Yom Rishon de Chanukah is kolel kol yemei Chanukah, and vai Yom Achron is kolel kol yemei Chanukah. In other words, there is a difference between the first day of Chanukah and the last day of Chanukah in the following way. Because the first day, Zainin di ala tog kolul bekoyach. On the first day of Chanukah, all of the days of Chanukah are there in potential. And in dem Yom Achron, Zainin de ala tog bepoyel. So he introduces this concept of between koach and poel, potential and realization of the potential. Koach means an ability. You could do it. You have strength, but you didn't do anything yet with that strength. You have it, but it's not bepoel. It hasn't been applied to anything yet. But the last day represents bepoel. It's the work of your hands. It's the human output. It's the accomplishment that was made utilizing the koach that you're given. So the Rebbe explained that Beit Shammai always looked at the world in its ultimate potential. And actually, I'm going to put it in a very simple way, from the perspective of the giver of Torah, Hashem. In Hashem's eyes, when He gave us Torah, okay, there was no difference between days, moments, hours. He gave us a Torah which spells out an entire calendar, even many hidden references to Chanukah, all the way back to the beginning of the Torah, that the world was tohu vavohu. Even the word Bereshis contains potential references to Chanukah. So it was all mapped out, all the different Yom Tovim, all the events, the Purim events, the Cheder Egel and subsequent establishment of Yom Kippur, the Sukkot event to commemorate Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Pesach event to commemorate Yetzias Mitzrayim, every Shavuos, the Matan Torah, it was all laid out. Right? Hashem's world, potential, koach, and poel are the same. Every moment in time is unified into one moment of time. There is no time. Space and time in this world were creation. Recently, just on Shabbos Chanukah, my mechutin, who's quite an accomplished computer scientist, said that in the journals right now of astrophysics, they are still stumped by what causes time. They absolutely don't know. Einstein formulated the idea that space and time are a continuum. They're all like there's a dimension of creation known as time. We know that. Hashem created time so we would have Yom Tovim, that we'd have holidays and opportunities and mitzvos to perform, Kvura, Chuppah and Kedushin, Chesed, Avelus, Chasanus. All these different things require time elapse. But from the perspective of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there is no time elapse. Time collapses into one simple moment in time. Call it the moment right before creation, which time did not yet exist. And we know in the Olam HaEmes, the Neshamas, Mitzvah Hashem, we should all reach Olam Haba after 120. More importantly, we should live until Bias Mashiach, in which we will be able to live eternally in our bodies, here in Eretz Yisrael, with the third Beis HaMikdash, that the Beis HaMikdash was always a time, always a experience, including the Mishkan, where the confinement of time and space collapsed. So, for example, Chazal teach us that the Aron was Eino Min Amida. You could actually not fit the Aron Kodesh and its staves and its staffs that you carry it with in the space allocated for in the Mishkan. It was impossible. Another Medrash says that when Moshe addressed Klal Yisrael in Sefer Dvarim, all of Klal Yisrael stood between the two staves of the Aron Kodesh. How is that possible? It's not humanly possible. It's only if space as a restriction has been lifted completely. Okay. Then, in addition to that, we see that in Pirkei Avos, in the 5th parak, we're told about 10 miracles that occurred in the Beis HaMikdash. This seems to be even in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, in the years about 150, maybe 200 years before the Chanukah story. And that is as follows. It says, Lo hisriach basar HaKodesh. Basar HaKodesh, the meat of the Basar HaKodesh, never ever deteriorated. How is that possible? And there was never a zvuv in the Beis HaMitpachayim, which would indicate decay. Decay requires time. Meat spoils not in 1 second. Okay, if you're in a hot day and you're in Beit Shemesh and you buy a piece of meat from the kosher market and you put it in the back of your car and it's 100 degrees, okay, so it might be a very short period of time where that meat is no longer recommended for eating. But it still requires time. In the first millisecond that you place a cold piece of meat straight from the butcher in your 100-degree car, it has not yet deteriorated. So I'd like to suggest that what they're really saying is there was no time elapse reality in the Beit HaMikdash. Similarly, space. It says, Omdim tzfufim mishtachavim revachim. And they would bow down. They would have plenty of room. How is it possible? They were shoulder to shoulder, bumper to bumper. They couldn't move. But when it came to bowing down, somehow miraculously, there was enough space for everyone. That's a spatial dimension of change. That's really a miracle. Okay? So that is in the intense presence of the Shekhinah, okay, which existed even in the second Beis HaMikdash, even today in the Makom HaMikdash, although not to the extent that it was in Beit Rishon. And therefore, these miracles were present and able to exist because Lifnei Hashem, from Hashem's perspective, there is no elapse of time. So now let's go back to Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai says that it's imperative upon the Jewish people not to look at Torah from their perspective, but from Hashem's perspective. We want to do the Ratzon Hashem. Let's look at what Hashem sees. Hashem doesn't see the first day and the second day and the third day. Of course he can. But essentially, from his perspective, the first day and the last day are the same point in time. Says Beit Shammai, let's strive to be like Hashem. Let's try to achieve the Ratzon Hashem in this world. That's our job, to surpass this worldly limits, to get past the limits of time and space, utilizing the miracle of Torah learning and Torah and mitzvos, which imbibe us with the Shekhinah energy. Mishnah Pirkei Avos tells us, Afilu Yachid, that's Osek in Torah, Shekhinah is with him. It says, Kol makom asher askir et shemi, avo elecha ubarachticha. Hashem's bracha, which is the Birkas Kohanim, essentially means my Shekhinah will come to you. Wherever you are, just open a sefer. I heard from Rabbi Soloveitchik Zichron Livracha on a recording of a shir that in 1967, I believe, he was in triple avelos. He lost 3 family members, for which he had to sit shiva, including his wife. I think a wife and a brother. And at that time, he was very broken emotionally. He was a very emotional man for all his giant intellect. He had a Hasidic heart, as we know, and actually taught Tanya in Shiurim. Oh, he says nobody was interested in his Shiurim and Tanya, only in Lamdus, only in Brisker Torah. So he said he was so broken, he opened up a Gemara to learn. He actually felt Hashem's hand on his shoulder, comforting him, and little steps of some divine presence coming to listen to him learning. That's the reality. You can bring that even as an individual person if you're of that stature, or maybe not even. That anybody can bring the Shekhinah to a presence using the miracle of Torah itself, which is itself beyond time, space, contains all spatial reality, contains all time reality. But that's a different subject. But one example of that. So 1 second. Beis Hillel, on the other hand, says, although it's very, very important to strive to get to the presence of Hashem, to reach Himmel, to reach Gan Eden, Bisman, in our times, he says we look at it differently. We look at Torah from the perspective of the receiver. And when we receive the Torah, we're given all these Yom Tovim, and 613 mitzvos, and hundreds of mitzvos d'Rabbanon, and corollary mitzvos. Ein Sof, and Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, and Karen Kayemet Lolam Haba. Yes, we will experience the joy and reward of those mitzvos in Olam Haba, but the peiros are right here, and we have to eat those peiros, because right now we're alive. Yes, we're building up our Olam Haba place. We're setting our place, our portion, Olam Haba, every mitzvah we do here, but that's not the focus, says Beis Hillel. The focus is to create a reality. Hashem's Ratzon was to bring his Dira down here in the Tachtonim, as it says in the Sfarim HaKadoshim, and therefore he created the world for us. Yes, to bring mitzvahs, to light a Chanukah candle, one at a time, one day after another day after a third day, and keep building more energy of Torah and mitzvos in this finite world. And where therefore we look at not our full poyel as if it's already happened. No, living our life from the human perspective is very much a process. We go through a process of aging. We go through a process of reaching bar mitzvah, like it says in Pirkei Avos, ben chamesh lemikra, ben esel lemishnah, ben chamesh esrei letalmud, ben shmonasar lechuppah. Note the day, I don't get into the shidduch controversies of when you're supposed to get married, but it does say ben shmonasar lechuppah, and ben esrim lirdof is to race after what? After Torah, mitzvahs, and chesed. Be a rodef shalom. Make shalom with your wife all the time. Go out and acquire parnasa for your family, whether it's through Kli Kodesh work or whether it's any other work. So we live in a process, says Beis Hillel. Everything is process. We go from koach, but we achieve poel after poel after poel after poel. It's a non-stop project that continues our whole life. Okay, so one example of that, and the Rebbe spoke about in his Sicha, was the reference to Az Yashir Moshe. Notice, Zos Chanukah, which let me explain, is the Torah reading that we say at the last day of Hanukkah, but it's also referenced on the first day of the Karbanos. Remember, the Karbanos of the 12 Nesiim, which are read on Hanukkah, are all identical. They're all the same. And yet, the Torah invests enormous amount of psukim to re-detail them, one shevet at a time. Okay, so we start the Torah reading on Hanukkah, day 1, with the bracha of the Shechina. That would symbolize Poel, because by Hashem, by giving us Yivarecha Hashem B'Shmerecha, which emanates out of the Mishkan, that's Hashem's portion. That's Hashem's bracha that the Kohanim are pouring onto us. But at the end, we speak about Zos Chanukas HaMizbeach and recap the totals of all the 12 tribes at once, which seems completely redundant. I know math. Maybe we even have calculators today. It's not that difficult to figure out the cumulative gifts. And those gifts are unusual gifts. And they don't mean the same to every tribe. Rashi brings the idea that it represents the beginning of mankind. Adam is Karas Kesef Echad. Shloshu Mea Mishkala is a reference to the year that he begat the person who would guarantee human existence, because Cain and Hevel were basically not the ones to carry the human dimension forward. It was going to be Shais, and that happened in the 130th year, and so on and so forth. Ayel Echad, this connected the Avos, it's connected the Torah, Karas Kesef Echad, that's the mitzvos, etc. And we culminate by saying we're here in the Mishkan today, and we have Birkas Kohanim, which emanated from the Mishkan and Beis HaMikdash. It's a recap of the entire history. Okay? So, yes, but that was a tahalich. We first had Adam. We first had the Avera with Chava. Then we had the Tikkun with Chava of giving birth to Shais. And then it led to the 10 generations between Adam to Noah. But that didn't quite work out. And the 10 generations from Noah to Avram, where Avram was Makabel, the O. It says, Kibel loves Schar Kulam. Doesn't mean that he got the reward of all those people. He made sure they would get their reward. He salvaged the world. Possible connection to Hashem. If not for Avram and the Jewish people, there would be no connection to Hashem. None. And that was the cumulative effect. So it's not unusual if you think about it. If you think about it in the context of Hillel and Shammai's debate. In the beginning of Hanukkah, we look at the potential Birkas Kohanim, which is the end game. You get to the Beis HaMikdash, you get to the Mishkan, you've gotten the Shechina all the way down to this world, but it takes a heck of a lot. It takes the Avos and their Nisyonos and Yetzias Mitzrayim and all the pain and suffering. And finally, in Matan Torah and overcoming Chet Egel, and finally, you're going to have Birkat Kohanim. Okay? But that's from Hashem's perspective, is immediate. From our perspective, we have to build towards that. And what do we have at the very end of where it's Zos Hanukkah? The cumulative computation of everybody? That's a different world. That's an enormous achievement. Because you know what? If one of the Shvatim did it, it would be an enormous achievement. But that they all did it, similar fashion, with one voice, albeit with different dimensions, according to Medrash, different kavanos, but that they held it together and accomplished that, that's the mamish bepoel. That is activating the full potential of Klal Yisrael. Nachman Isfarm writes about, if you do factorials, for example, you do 1 times 1, 2. 2 times 2, 4. 3 times 3, 3 to the third is 9. Once you get past 4 or 5 numbers, the numbers start shooting up into the thousands and then beyond computation. When you put Jews together in a minyan, it's an infinitely more powerful Shechina than with one person. It's possible with one person. In fact, the Mishnah Nova says you can have it with 3 people in a bezdin, which, B'kerev Elohim Yishbot. Hashem is with the bezdin of 3. Hashem is with a group of 5 people, interestingly enough. Agudaso al Eretz Yisada. Aguda is a fist. Fist is 5 fingers, right? But when you get to Eser, that's already a different world, okay? Then really, there's really no number beyond that. Because Eser is the full, you're connected then into the Wi-Fi, lahavdil, of all of Klal Yisrael, the totality of Klal Yisrael. You've reached a moment of Hashras HaShechina which is kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. You can lane, you can daven, you can duchen. You're logged into the Shechina Wi-Fi. Like if you go on your phone, you'll see Shechina. And the passcode is 613. You log on. That's what a minyan can do. You create a chefza de kedusha. Anyway, so this is the deep aspect of the machlokas Beis Hillel Beis Shammai according to Lubavitch Rebbe. Day 1, we see it from Hashem's perspective, like Beit Shammai. Day 8, we look back at what we have accomplished. Now, that's what brings us back to the coins of our Hasmonean king. Let's understand. The chronology is very important. In the year 319, before the Common Era, Alexander the Great invades the Persian Empire, which includes Eretz Yisrael. So that day, which we know to be the 9th of Teves, the day that Ezra HaSofer died. Ezra HaSofer is identified by Chazal as the final prophet of Israel, otherwise known as Malachi. So if Malachi / Ezra passes away the moment that Alexander the Great, Alexander Mokdon, enters the land of Israel, and then the presiding Kohen Gadol, Shimon Tzaddik, who took over for Ezra, runs and meets him and offers him 2 massive concessions. Number 1, that instead of destroying the Beis HaMikdash or putting an idol of himself there, which is what he traditionally did in all the nations that he would conquer, he offered him a human testimony. He said, the names of all the children born in this year, and when you come back to visit Eretz Yisrael as a province of the Alexandrian Empire, which it will become part of, and in 6 years' time, he conquered the rest of the world. So you'll find thousands and thousands of Alexander babies. You could say that was Yaft Elokim Liefes B'Yishkan Ba'ohalei Shem. Just saying, Shem is name. Ishkan Ba'ohalei Shem. We give you a living testimony of Jews who love and worship Hashem and have your benefit in mind and bring karbanos for you. They actually brought karbanos. Alexander the Great came to the Beis HaMikdash and they offered karbanos, as we today have a minhag of davening for the welfare of the government, especially in exile. If you're in exile, should do it today too. I think very important. they need a lot of help, a lot of tefillos. So that was what he convinced them to do. But one more thing, he said, when you finish your conquest, which took 6 years, we will acknowledge ourselves as a province of your mighty empire by signing every single Jewish document with your name and the day of your reaching your pinnacle of greatness, which would take place in 6 years later in the year 313. That's called Minyan Shtaros. Until recently, ironically, the Jews of Teiman still dated their Shtaros that way. Teiman, where the Houthis are hanging out. They go way back. Okay, so that's the significance of the early years of the Beis HaMikdash. And then what happens? 180 years later, after the Jews kind of started to degrade, they went from Prushim, and many of them became Stukim, observant Jews, but not of the rabbinic law. They believed in the Torah 100%. They interpreted the Torah. Lo savara eish b'chol mosvosechem b'yom HaShabbos. They said, okay, no candles on Shabbos. And we say, no, adarabba. Hadlakas Neiros. We put it right at the beginning of the Masechah Shabbos, right there by Mem Likin, to show, no, we're not Stukim. We know what the Torah means. We have a Masorah that goes all the way back to Har Sinai. Halacha l'Moshe miSinai. And so that was like a mid-stage of assimilation. And they were prominent in the second Beis HaMikdash as Kohanim Gedolim and as members of Sanhedrin until the Hasmonean came around. And then there was, unfortunately, the third stage, which was Mityavnim. At that point, they abandoned everything and just wanted to fully assimilate into the Greek Empire. This was very sad. It was 180 years of deterioration until after Shimon Tzaddik was gone, after he was no longer Kohen Gadol, one of his descendants, Chonya, was a legitimate Kohen, a frum person, Shomer Torah Mitzvos, was to the fullest extent Halacha Kerabanan, and he himself is deposed by his brother Jason. Jason, unfortunately, goes to the newly risen king known as Antiochus Epiphanes. an heir of the Seleucid dynasty. One of the 4 generals that split up the Alexander's kingdom when he died was the Seleucids, who were based in Antioch in Syria. And interesting, Syria. We're back in Syria. And the Ptolemies were in Mitzrayim. It was Ptolemy HaMelech who forced us to translate the Torah into Greek. You see the assimilation going on actively. But we tried, the Torah world tried to assimilate the best that they could to take the beauty of the culture of Yavon and use it to enhance our mitzvos, create the concept of hidur mitzvah. Now, on a deep level, I want you to understand how radical it is that Chanukah is completely built around the notion of hidur mitzvah. Why? Well, if you really want to know, that brings the best of Rome, what they emulated, what they wanted to say. And Rav Moshe Shapiro said it this way. Rav Moshe Shapiro said in one of his Chanukah Shiurim, he said, Yaakov Avinu's job, the Torah Community's job, Titan Emes Yaakov, the Torah learning community, what's their job? What's their job? It says, Emes Malkeinu. Hashem's Torah is truth. He's our king. He has commanded us Torah mitzvos. We learn them, we observe them. We promote them, we teach them to our children. Yomam v'layla. Well, what was the job of Yaakov's compatriot, known as Esav? What was his job that he was supposed to do? He was supposed to do the next phrase. Efes zulato. We're going to hold the truth of Torah, the Nevuah of Torah, the Chachma of Torah, the Sanhedrin of Torah, the Anshe Knesset Gedolah of Torah, the Shechina of Torah. But we need help in bringing it to the world. Efes zulato. That not only is no point in the globe not knowing about Torah mitzvahs, but agrees that the entire world itself, from this table to this microphone, is all a cheftza of Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's the immanency that really wasn't brought fully out to the world conceptually until the arrival of Baal Shem Tov and the Hasidim, that each and every element of the world is getlachkeit, is complete from kite. Don't look at anything on face value. Don't believe it has an existence other than Hashem and the force and the letters of the alphabet that construct them, all the animals, all the everything from domim, sameach, chaim, medaber. By the way, they say, it's an interesting word, they say between every one of the 4 types of creation, that was Esav's job, to bring to the entire creation, Efes Zulato. There is nothing that's not Hashem. And Efes, by the way, is a very advanced mathematical number. It didn't happen until much, much later in time. People didn't have those numbers. That might be why there was no mispar when Yosef was counting the grain of Mitzrayim, ki ein mispar, was because the known Egyptian numbers were cracked. There was no way to push them forward because Efes Zulato, they hadn't reached the concept of Efes. Efes Zulato, nothing, absolutely nothing is not Hashem. It's not a cheftza of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, including our very souls, our very bodies, our very minds. Okay. So if that was his job, Efes Zulato, we need to spread some of this. But there was a koach in the world, a couple of koachs, that came along the spectrum. So as the Rambam teaches, Christianity in its essence, and Islam even more so, were ways, intermediate stages, to go to the 5th level. Domain means mineral life, tzomeach, plant life, botanical life, right? So chai is animals, medaber is humans, Yisroel, like it says in the Kuzari, there are 5 levels. But in the middle of those levels, there's always some things in between. There's transitional. So, for example, from minerals, as you move towards, but be easier like this. When you get to plants, there are plants that act like animals. For example, the Venus flytrap eats meat. It's a plant. How's that? Chayas eat meat. Chayas are predators. Since when is a plant a predator? Right? Is there, you ever running away from a plant? Run away from a plant? Why? It's going to attack you? Yeah, it can attack. Maybe not you, but on a smaller level. Transition. You go from chai to medaber. There are animals that resemble human beings. Monkeys, chimpanzees, high-level intelligence. They're in between. They're a transitional creation moving towards the next level. Between Adam, who's a medaber, and Yisrael, there is intermediate levels. So according to the Rambam, for example, you could say Christianity and Islam, which taught monotheism, which taught the concept of Mashiach to the world, they both erred on either side, which is why I believe Muslims keep Friday, Christians keep Sunday, Jews keep Shabbos. One went to the right, one went to the left. Because the Christians who keep Sunday, right, what was their problem? They went right to the concept of Rachamim, but no mitzvahs, nothing. Right? They trashed everything. And then, including Bris Milah, the essential Jewish identity. And then, on the other side, the Ishmaelim were coming from a place of din. Yes, Bris Milah, yes, modesty. Oh, by the way, they'll kill you if you don't wear your head covered. That's not exactly our way. They're two extremes. They went to Friday, they went to Sunday. The way of Torah is Darchei Noam, Chol Drachei Shalom. So, but at the same time, they did represent some sort of transitional idea between Avodah Zarah and this concept of Efes Zulasot. So the fact that Greece was super effective in conquering the world intellectually and also physically, a healthy mind and a healthy body, although they left out the dimension of Shmona, they left out the dimension of Milah. Many of the Jews replaced their Milah to participate in the Olympic Games that even King Herod would later build after the Hasmonean dynasty. His was the final dynasty. Hasmonean were 103 years, Herod was 103 years, and the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. But by the time Herod comes around, Rome is fully in control of Eretz Yisrael. It went from a Greek province to a Roman province, from a Hasmonean province, which was independent. And when was it independent? Here. At the time of Alexander Yanai. What does that mean? The coins of Alexander Yanai and the celebration of his Malchus in the city of Yericho show things reaching Mikoach El Poel. There was a Jewish state. There was a Beit HaMikdash. There was a kahuna. Now, it is true that King Yanai ended his life as a tzduki. But that was, so to speak, the decline. But at year 25, where these coins were found, everything was still in full potential. He wasn't a tzduki. He was a yid. And he took the coin and he put it in the Jewish language of Aramaic, and then he put it on the other side on the language of Greeks, fulfilling the whole potential that Yaakov and Esav were supposed to fulfill, which we still struggle with today. That's maybe why, right? We see, for example, in the mitzvah of Kaneka, the concept of Hod. And this huge lumdus in the Brisker Torah about how Hiddur Mitzvah works. Is it essentially connected to the mitzvah? Does it exist as a supplement to the mitzvah, but not directly connected? That's all the lumdus. However, the concept is, yes, we can do this, and we did do it for a short, brief period of time. We broke free from the yoke of Galus, of Nebuchadnezzar, of the Persian kings, of Koresh, and of Daryavesh, and certainly of Achashverosh, and even Alexander the Great. And we shone through. We reached our fullest potential. And that was Hod. And that's what Hanukkah was. That was the time in which we did touch a taste of what the Jewish future is going to be like, before we slid backwards into what became the Roman exile. So why is Zos Hanukkah so important? If it's the day, as the Rabbi explained, that we reach our fullest potential, then it's the Alexander Yanai moment. It's the moment where everything is good. It's the moment where we've touched back to Shmini. Shmini is Lamala Min HaTeva. It's the place, it's the Shechina, it's the Beis HaMikdash. It's the miracle of Hanukkah, which makes no sense, which had no place in the Greco-Roman world, and yet happened anyway, because Klal Yisrael was doing its job of Emes Malkeinu, declaring, that's what the Hasmonean did, Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Hashem, declaring Hashem is our king, not anybody else, not any other country, not any other ruler, no other empire, no other power, no other politics, no other entity like our United Nations, means nothing. We are not at Efes Zulato, but we are at Emes Malkeinu at all times. And that's the promise of Beis Hillel and Zos Hanukkah. I'll just add that the Yismach Yisroel in his writings on Hanukkah, Nun Gimel, says that Zos is something visible. Visible, tangible, it happened, right? We said, Mikoach el hapoel, it's real. It says tzaddikim on Zos Hanukkah can see to a level of Me'ez Hashem Haisa Zos. They can see Hashem's hand in everything. They can look at you and tell you, this is your journey, this is your tikkun, this is your life, this is what you need to do. Go to a tzaddik, get a bracha. And that's maybe why we say the end of judgment is Zos Chanukah. Why is the end of judgment Zos Chanukah? Because now we move from Koach el Poel. We've reached the end point on Chanukah, where we say, now our year, which we started Rosh Hashanah, reaches its full fruition, in which we can, in this collapse time and space, just for that one day, and say, we want a new world, Hashem. We want a second chance. We want to touch the future on this day. So it should be in Hashem's will that the message that he sent us, a little Hanukkah gelt, and the understandings of that the Hanukkah gelt go on the 5th Hanukkah, the day that's not Shabbos, we're a little bit more involved in the gelt. But that's not the end of the story. We're going to get to Zos Hanukkah, in which we touch our full potential actualized. Don't forget to understand your full potential is what you could do this year to serve Hashem, b'simcha, to proclaim Hashem Elokeinu, right? Emes Malkeinu. Hashem is truly my king, truly my king. If he's my king, I have to do his bidding. I have to learn Torah. I have to do mitzvahs. I have to do chesed. I have to do a better job. I have to do tikkun amidos. I have to speak up for Klal Yisrael. I have to defend the fellow Jew. This is the day. This is the day where we proclaim Emes Malkeinu. But it's also a day where we touch, maybe from a distance, maybe through a time capsule, the coins of Alexander Yanai, the full fruition, before he turned sour, of the dream of the Chashmonaim of Matityahu Maccabee. And here are the coins. Coins are real. Hashem should provide us the power, the monarchy, the budget, the success, the clarity that will return our full kingdom, our full independence, with tshuva, with masim tovim, with leaders that respect Torah and mitzvos, who try to emulate them and steer people away from the direction that they're going, and say instead, Efes ulaso. Hashem is everything. Hashem will get us out of this war. Hashem will get us the hostages back. Hashem will get us independence from and freedom from our enemies which attack us. Notice we were attacked on 7 fronts, not 8. You can't touch us on the 8th front. That's our Zos Chanukah. Hashem should give blessings on this day. Give a little tzedakah if you didn't give on the 5th day. Do, if you can, a personal tshuva to Hashem, accept Hashem as your melech, and through that we should be zocheh to the bias gold tzedek of Her Yiboneh. Yom